I One thing which I really loved about your class today is the activity that you had. Like, I think it was such a great way to engage the students, and it was really fun, and them hooked in, like, at the end when they were sharing their words, and you know, every single group was writing down exactly what they thought it meant, and it was really fun.
Awesome.
So great job with that, and
Thank
sort of
you.
like how you can bring in sort of engagement and hook those students. What I want to talk about and focus on is just a little bit about your vision for behavioral expectations and classroom management, and hear how you sort of rolled that out, and then talk about sort of like resetting now that you're in that new room, and practice a little bit, since that's what we do. So why don't we start like first with what your vision of classroom management is. Like, in a perfect world, what you rolled out to the students at the beginning of the year, what did you sort of say to them?
So I gave them 2 parameters for having, because I see them in 6 classes, 6 different classes.
You're going to be best friends by the
Yep,
end of the year.
we already are. So the rule is that sit where you're going to be successful. If you're not going to be successful where you're sitting, you move. It's up to you. Take the initiative and sit wherever you can be successful.
Okay.
That's worked 3/4 of the time. Like, people will secede from their tables and move to other tables. You must come prepared, ready to work, and sit wherever you need to do to be successful and get things done. And we haven't had any problems. The other thing is regarding like the chatter in class. The rule is that if you're speaking, don't speak until you have the respect you deserve. So a lot of them will question each other and they'll be like, "Yo, listen to me," and they'll kind of monitor it themselves, because I don't feel like having to repeatedly tell people to be quiet.
Okay.
That works probably, again, 3/4 of the time.
Okay. Because you were co-teaching with them as well?
Yes.
Yeah, and so what are the sort of expectations around in other classrooms as well that the teachers have sort of rolled out?
Same thing.
Same things. Okay.
So we don't do assigned seats. In some of the classes, we'll have the lower level students sit on one side. It's just they already know, they already flock there, but they can sit wherever they need to sit. There's a chattering problem in all the classes that's been slowly getting a little better.
Okay.
As they get annoyed with each other, so they're kind of self-monitoring, but it's been consistent, I think.
Okay. How do you think that sort of affects the scope of a lesson with that?
It's distracting to me. The bigger problem is not so much like 2 kids chattering because they're not distracting everybody. The bigger problem is when there's one student who lately has been really like embarrassed to be an ESL. As you notice, he's the one who keeps getting up. He gets up and goes to every other table to distract them or to tell them the answers every time. That's a conversation that's going to be happening today.
Okay.
In general, it seems like if it's one or 2 people chattering, at least they're not distracting the whole class.
Yep.
So it's been all right. The problems are people getting up and trying to make it so others can't learn.
Yeah. I think in just sort of rotating around and talking to some of the students too, one of the things that I saw was like when they first went off to work on creating the words, is that they weren't entirely clear on the directions, and like and so I think that sort of like that chatter at the table distracted them from what they actually had to do in the class, and things ended up taking a little bit longer than you probably would have wanted to do. Deliver the instructions. If you have everyone's sort of attention, and then you can deliver that in 30 seconds, a minute. Check for understanding, make sure they've got it, and set them on their way to complete the task at hand. So that's what I want to focus on, of just like how we can sort of reset the expectations, and to in order to facilitate the activities in your instructions and make sure that they're clear, and bring just a little bit more order, right? So let's use this sort of moving into a new room as sort of a fresh start, right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things I want to talk about, like their entry to the room, like what you want that to look like, and how you're going to roll that out, and then what your expectations are for raising hands and listening to other people's answers, and then the third thing is your expectations for electronics. As well, since that was a little bit distracting.
Yeah.
So let's
I'd like to start with that one, actually, if we could.
Yeah, great. So let's start with that. Do you want to take a few minutes? I don't know if you'll need this, but just take a minute to sort of think through exactly what your expectations are, if you want to jot anything down. Okay. So let's start there. I'll take some notes. So what's your vision?
Okay. So regarding electronics.
Yep.
I don't want to see any texting. I don't want to see any improper use of technology.
What does improper use mean?
The problem is some of the students count on using dictionaries that they can speak into. Arabic speakers, we have one crappy Arabic dictionary, and it's not in the dialect that student speaks.
Okay.
So he counts on taking out his phone, speaking a word into it, and having it speak back.
Okay.
If I see that, I don't have a problem with it. It looks terrible to the school. We shouldn't see phones, but we don't have the resources. What am I going to do? I don't speak Arabic. I don't want to see phones for texting.
Okay. So go back to the improper use part. What does that mean? So texting is one thing. What else?
Not academic, not translating. If there's something that you can do without your phone, you should be doing it without your phone.
Okay.
If you can look up a word in a dictionary, a real dictionary, which we have, you do that.
Okay.
And they know there are dictionaries that they can go get.
Great. So when are the times in the classroom that no matter what they should not be using their phone, and when are the times in the class that they can use their phone for like translating?
When I'm giving instructions, they shouldn't be using phones. When somebody else is speaking, they shouldn't be using phones. The only time phones should be used for translating is during independent work.
Okay, so only during independent work. Great.
And it should be a situation where the student has cleared it with me beforehand, like, Miss, I'm using my phone because I'm translating. With one or two of them, I know it's consistent, so I don't get shocked when I see the phone out. You could also tell if they put it under the table, they're texting. If they have it out in front of them, they're translating.
So that's one thing I want to talk about. So where, if they are using it, where should their phone be?
On the desk.
On the desk.
I have to see that they are using it for translating.
Okay. And if they want to use their phone, but they're not using it at that particular moment, where should they be keeping their phone?
Away, I don't see it.
Okay, great. So what I'm hearing is like the only times that the phone should be out, if you're using it for academic purposes, it should be sort of like face up so that you can see what it is. Otherwise, it's away.
Yeah.
Okay. So how are you gonna sort of reset that expectation? What are you gonna say?
I think I'm gonna do that in every class.
Okay.
The tricky part is that in their psychology class, they're allowed to use the phones for anything, not for text. They're allowed to use it for their projects.
Yeah.
Everything's very inquiry based. So I think just in general, as I see them in every class, maybe I'll remind them when I'm co-teaching. Have another teacher support on that.
And so, and really setting the expectation of like when it's okay and when it's not okay. So let's practice. Okay. Let's start with this. Why don't you get up? We'll be. Imagine we just come in. We're sitting down. You're about to do your. Lesson. What are you teaching in your next class with them?
More of this. So.
Okay, great. So let's say it's like before.
All right. So
before you're diving into your mini lesson, you're just going to do sort of reset expectations for phone use. We've all just sat down. Do now has happened.
So do now is done.
Yep.
We're about to move to the mini lesson.
Yep.
All right, we've gone over the do now. All right, so before we move on to our activity for today, I want to reset some expectations about cell phone use. Cell phones can only be used for translating or for academic purposes with prior approval from me. If you're using your cell phone for a pre-approved reason, it must be out on your desk. I want to see it. It should be sitting on your desk. It should not be under the desk. It should not be hidden under your table, under your chair. It should be on your desk. If you are using your phone for any other reason, I can't say it must be taken away. We're not allowed to take them away, but I'll have to come up with some kind of consequence. But that's the only reason.
Okay. So a couple of things that we're going to think about. First of all, let's talk about consequences. I want to talk about that. But then the other thing is like, think about, just like you do sort of like what to do directions. Okay. There are 3 things I want you to know about phones. One is that they can only be used for translating. 2, that translating can only happen during independent practice time. And 3, what
happens if you don't?
Exactly.
Yeah. Or so like where it should be.
Or where it should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I don't know if it's 3. Maybe it's 4.
Oh yeah, that's 3 is the most they can handle. So.
Yeah. All right. So take a minute, write that out.
The tricky part with the consequences that we're not allowed to take them away. What we're allowed to do is put their name on the cell phone list, and then their phone gets taken away by the dean.
Okay.
But the problem is they bring dummy phones, so the dummy phone gets taken away by the dean, so nothing really happens.
Okay. Well, write down those 3, and then we'll talk about the consequence in a second. Okay, so before we start, so there's the cell phone list when they bring in cell phones. What's another thing that that you can do as a teacher as a consequence?
With the cell phones?
Yeah.
See, we're not allowed to take them away.
Right.
All we're really allowed to do is put their name on that list.
Okay.
And I feel like any other consequence that like takes them away from their work is not worth pursuing.
Okay. Have you thought about doing any like phone calls home?
Yeah, the way we do it is we gather. We're trying to keep like a running document team-wide of what the infractions are, and then the advisor calls home.
Okay.
I can call home if I need to.
Or you can touch base with their advisor.
Yeah,
and
because
like,
if it's happening in every class, we don't want 6 calls home.
Okay.
So we're trying to like normalize and standardize our procedures for that.
Okay. So, I mean, that is like an area of leverage, though, is either talking to the advisor and bringing that in so the advisor can call home, or making, or you can make a phone call home too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. All right, let's try it one more time.
Alright, so before we continue on to our activity today, I want to re-clarify some of my expectations about cell phone use in the classroom.
Okay.
Cell phone use in the classroom, right? So there are 3 things that I expect when we're using our cell phones. Number 1, I expect that phones are only being used for translating. Number 2, translating may only happen during independent practice, not during the do now, not while other people are speaking, not during any other part of the lesson. And number 3, if you are using your phone for translating, your phone must be on your desk out in the open where I can see it.
Now, if my phone's out, right, when you get to that point, what are you going to tell me?
What do you mean?
So let's say that I'm a student and I just came in and I set my phone down on the table.
So I would say, for example, right now I'm giving instructions. This is not independent practice, so I shouldn't see any phones out on the table. And hopefully you put it away, and you're not. So I would say, excuse me, your phone's still on the table. I need you to put it away.
Okay. Where should I put it?
You should put it somewhere where I will not see it. Not on your lap, not on your desk. So I guess in a bag, right? Put it in your bag.
Okay. All right, so try that again. So I'm just say my phone's out.
All right, Mr. Baker, your phone is out. This is not independent practice, so I need for you to put it away in your bag, please.
Okay.
And I'm hoping after doing that once or twice, I can just say phone away,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll understand.
Yep.
They've been doing. If I say phone away, they put it.
Yep.
They do put it away, but I think it is good to just remind them where.
So one thing that was much better. I like that you did the 3 steps and gave me, clear directions of where it should go, and using that phone away thing, economy of language, great. So what happens then if you see someone who's had their phone out multiple times, even after your redirection?
At that point, then they have to go on the phone list.
Great.
They know that.
Okay. Great. Right.
And I haven't done it to them yet, so they're going to be shocked when it happens. But
okay. Yeah. So
I know that happening.
definitely follow through.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I had my phone out 3 times. What would you say to me?
How would you go if you do whisper that you're not on the phone list?
Try.
Your phone's been out 3 times this period, so you're going on the phone list. Now I need you to put it away.
That was a good tone. I was a little frightened.
Very calm. Very calm. They don't understand any other.
Good.
Right.
Great. So I would definitely roll that out, and it's something you could do when
Next period.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing, we only have a few minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time because I know you have plenty to do. Is to just think through, and because we're in a crunch for time, let's just talk this through. Your your expectations around sharing out answers and raising hands, etc. I think in this setting in here, the way that it is set up here in a small group, it's probably a little bit more conversational. But thinking about your larger classes and being in that classroom, what do you need to tweak in terms of your expectations for hand raising and sharing out?
Yeah. The hand raising thing is a problem because they're all really shy, so they won't speak unless they feel like it's like when we sit here, we go around in a circle, and one by one you share, and they feel comfortable. They don't like being in that big room because they feel kind of out in the open and kind of self-conscious. Raising hands is probably not going to happen with them. I think cold calling works with them. They love it. They love to cold call each other. I think I might just go back to that. You say your answer, you choose someone else. They have no problem with that, but they do not want to volunteer answers unless someone gives them.
So I like the idea of using more cold calling. What about if someone is like answering and then someone else, like expectations about like jumping in or talking over that person? How can you reset that?
We do have an accountable talk protocol, which
Great.
we're going over in all the classes again. How to say that you agree with someone, disagree, and how to interject.
Mhm.
So in that case, they know they do need to raise their hand before they can speak. Unless they want to wait and be called on. Sometimes they'll raise their hand and I'll let that student pick who to call on.
Okay.
And that seems to work.
Okay.
But me waiting there for hands to go up, I will not get. I'll get the same 2 hands up and that's it.
Okay.
Because they're shy.
So bringing in that cold calling again, I would if they do want to interject, which is something that I saw today, and they just sort of like jumped in.
Mm-hmm.
How can you clarify the expectation of that's a time that you do raise your hand? What would you say?
I would probably have to say, hold on just a second. Franny's still speaking. Let her finish, and then you can speak.
Okay.
Or let her finish. You raise your hand, and then she can call on you.
And I think you bringing it back to sort of the parameters that you set. Set at the beginning of the year, like you really want them to be in a place where they can be successful, and that's going to help them do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for getting up and practicing today.
No, it's fun.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
practice. Yeah. Is there anything else that you